A single-father electrician and a billionaire heiress. When two opposite worlds collide, love might just change everything. Tonight, a simple repair call is about to become something Adrian Cole never saw coming. A connection with a woman from a completely different universe. Elena Voss, a powerful and wealthy young woman, meets a single father with working hands and an honest heart. But when feelings bloom between two opposing worlds, can they bridge the gap between wealth and poverty, social expectations, and their own deepest fears? Stay with this story until the very end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The rain hit harder than the forecast predicted. It drummed against the windshield of Adrian's truck as he squinted through the wipers, barely making out the winding road ahead. The GPS on his phone kept rerouting, confused by the half-paved driveways that branched off into the hills like veins. He was already running late, and the address he'd been given didn't match anything on the map. "Dad, are you still coming home tonight?" His daughter's voice came through the Bluetooth speaker, small and hopeful. Adrian glanced at the clock on the dash. 9:47, way past her bedtime. "I'll be there, sweetheart," he said, keeping his tone light even though exhaustion was settling into his shoulders. "Mrs. Chen staying with you, right?" "Yeah, but she fell asleep watching her show again." Adrian smiled despite himself. "That's okay. You go brush your teeth and get into bed. I'll check on you when I get back. Promise?" "Promise." The call ended, and the silence in the truck felt heavier. He'd been doing this for 3 years now, juggling jobs, bedtimes, parent-teacher conferences, and late-night emergency calls like this one. Ever since Sarah left, it had just been him and Mia. No backup plan, no safety net, just the two of them figuring it out one day at a time. The road curved sharply, and suddenly the trees opened up. Adrian's headlights swept across a massive iron gate, sleek and modern, with a security camera perched on top like a bird of prey. Beyond it, barely visible through the rain, sat a house that didn't belong in this world. It was all glass and sharp angles, built into the hillside like it had grown there. Lights blazed from every window, but they flickered erratically, like a heartbeat struggling to stay steady. Adrian pulled up to the intercom and pressed the button. Static crackled. Then a woman's voice, clipped and stressed. "Yes?" "Adrian Cole. I'm here about the electrical issue." A pause. "You're late." "Traffic and rain," Adrian said evenly. He didn't apologize for things outside his control anymore. Life had beaten that habit out of him. The gate buzzed and swung open. He drove through, tires crunching over wet gravel, and parked near the entrance. The house loomed above him, even more intimidating up close. Water poured from a broken gutter, splashing onto the stone steps. Adrian grabbed his toolbox from the truck bed, pulled his jacket hood up, and jogged toward the door. It opened before he could knock. A woman stood there, younger than he expected, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a messy knot and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. She wore an oversized sweater and bare feet, no jewelry, no makeup. For someone living in a mansion, she looked surprisingly human. "You're the electrician," she said. Not a question. "Adrian Cole." He extended a hand, but she was already turning away, waving him inside. "The main panel's downstairs. Everything's been shorting out for the past 2 hours. Security system's down, cameras are offline, and half the house is running on backup generators that keep cutting in and out." Adrian stepped into the foyer and stopped. The ceiling had to be 20 feet high, with a chandelier hanging in the center that flickered like a dying star. The floor was polished marble, reflecting distorted images of everything above it. To his left, a staircase spiraled upward. To his right, floor-to-ceiling windows revealed nothing but rain and darkness. "Have you had anyone else look at this?" Adrian asked, setting his toolbox down. 3 people. None of them could figure it out. She crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. One guy said the wiring was fine. Another said I needed to replace the whole system. The third one just left. Left? Said it wasn't worth his time. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Not worth his time to fix a house like this? He didn't say it like that. Her jaw tightened. But yeah, that was the message. Adrian didn't press. He'd learned a long time ago that people had their reasons for the walls they built. "Show me the panel." She led him through a hallway lined with abstract art, paintings that looked like someone had thrown emotion at a canvas and walked away. They passed a kitchen that could have been in a magazine, all stainless steel and stone countertops, untouched except for a single coffee mug sitting in the sink. The house felt enormous and empty at the same time, like a museum after hours. They descended a staircase into a finished basement. It was cooler down here, the air tinged with the smell of concrete and something faintly metallic. The electrical panel was mounted on the far wall, a large gray box with the door hanging open. Wires spilled out like guts from a wound. Adrian set his toolbox down and pulled out a flashlight. Who worked on this last? I don't know. The previous owner had renovations done before I bought the place. When was that? 8 months ago. He crouched in front of the panel, shining his light across the wiring. Immediately, he saw the problem. Or problems. Plural. Whoever had done the work had mixed old wiring with new, creating a patchwork system that was barely holding together. Some of the breakers were labeled wrong. Others weren't labeled at all. It was a disaster waiting to happen. This is a mess, Adrian muttered. Can you fix it? He glanced over his shoulder. She was standing a few feet away, arms still crossed, watching him with an intensity that felt almost uncomfortable, like she was waiting for him to fail. Yeah, Adrian said, but it's going to take a while. Whoever did this didn't know what they were doing, or they didn't care. Maybe both. How long? Couple hours, if I don't run into more surprises. She exhaled, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Fine. Do what you need to do. I'll need to shut off the main breaker. You'll lose power for a bit. That's fine. The generators will kick in. Adrian nodded and got to work. He started by killing the main breaker, plunging the basement into darkness except for the beam of his flashlight. The hum of the house, something he hadn't consciously noticed, went silent. Then, a few seconds later, a low rumble as the backup generators engaged. The lights flickered back on, dimmer than before but steady. He pulled out his multimeter and began testing circuits, tracing wires, identifying what belonged where. It was methodical work, the kind that required focus and patience. Adrian had always liked this part of the job. It was like solving a puzzle, finding order in chaos. The woman, he still didn't know her name, sat down on the bottom step, watching him. She didn't say anything, just observed. Most clients either hovered and asked a million questions or disappeared entirely. This was something in between. After about 20 minutes, Adrian spoke without looking up. You live here alone? Most of the time. Big house for one person. I didn't buy it for the size. He glanced at her. What did you buy it for? She hesitated, like she was deciding whether to answer. Privacy. Adrian let that sit. He understood the value of privacy, even if his own life didn't afford much of it. When you were a single parent in a small town, everyone knew your business whether you wanted them to or not. You have kids? She asked suddenly. The question caught him off guard. Yeah, a daughter. She's 7. What's her name? Mia. That's a nice name. Thanks. Adrian reconnected a neutral wire and moved on to the next circuit. She's probably asleep by now. Or supposed to be, anyway. You don't sound convinced. He smiled faintly. She's got a habit of reading under the covers with a flashlight. Thinks I don't know. Do you stop her? Not really. I did the same thing when I was her age. He paused. Long as she's not too tired for school, I let it go. She loves books. I'm not going to kill that. The woman nodded slowly, like she was filing that information away. You're a good father. I'm a tired father, Adrian said. Good is relative. Most people wouldn't say that. Most people don't do it alone. He didn't mean for it to sound bitter, but it came out that way. He shook his head, refocusing on the wiring. This wasn't the time or place for a pity party. Sorry, he added. Long day. Don't apologize. Her voice was softer now. I get it. Adrian doubted that, but he didn't argue. He worked in silence for a while, replacing a burnt-out breaker and rerouting a circuit that had been wired backward. The rain outside intensified, hammering against the small basement windows near the ceiling. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Can I ask you something? The woman said. Sure. Why didn't you leave when you saw how bad the wiring was? Adrian paused, wrench in hand. Because you need it fixed. The other guy didn't think so. The other guy's an idiot. He glanced at her. This isn't just a code violation. It's dangerous. If the wrong breaker trips under load, you could have a fire. I'm not going to walk away from that. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. You don't know me. Why do you care? Doesn't matter if I know you or not. I do the job right, or I don't do it at all. That's rare, Adrian shrugged. Shouldn't be. He turned back to the panel, but he could feel her still watching him. It wasn't uncomfortable, exactly, just unfamiliar. Most people looked at him and saw a guy in work boots with electrical tape on his belt. She seemed to be seeing something else, though he couldn't figure out what. Another hour passed. Adrian replaced 2 more breakers, tightened loose connections, and relabeled the entire panel so it actually made sense. His back ached from crouching, and his fingers were sore from handling tools in the cold basement air, but the work was almost done. What do you do? Adrian asked, breaking the silence. What do you mean? For work? Or is this just inherited? She smirked, but there wasn't much humor in it. Bit of both. My family has money. I manage some of it. Investments, mostly. Sounds stressful. It is. Why do it then? Because if I don't, someone else will, and they won't care about the people it affects. Adrian nodded. He didn't fully understand that world, but he understood responsibility. Fair enough. He reconnected the main breaker and stood, dusting off his hands. All right, let's see if this works. He flipped the main back on. For a second, nothing happened. Then the lights brightened, steady and strong. The hum of the house returned, smooth and even. No flickering, no surges. The woman stood, eyes wide. That's it? That's it. Adrian closed the panel door and latched it. Your security system should come back online in a minute. Cameras too. Everything's stable now. She stared at the panel like it had just performed a miracle. How did you... It's just wiring, Adrian said, picking up his toolbox. Nothing magic about it. Just takes time and patience. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time since he'd arrived, she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small upturn at the corners of her mouth, but it changed her whole face, made her seem less guarded, less alone. Thank you, she said quietly. You're welcome. They walked back upstairs together. The house felt different now, warmer, less oppressive. The lights glowed without interruption, and the security panel by the front door blinked green. Adrian set his toolbox down and pulled out his phone to write up the invoice. What do I owe you? She asked. He calculated the hours, the parts, the late-night rate. 300. She blinked. That's it? That's what it costs. The last guy quoted me 2,000 just to look at it. Adrian frowned. Then the last guy was ripping you off. She pulled out her phone and tapped a few times. His phone buzzed with a payment notification. He glanced at the screen and froze. You sent me $1,000. I know. I said 300. I heard you. She slipped her phone back into her pocket. The extra is for coming out in the rain and for not leaving. Adrian wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up with him. And honestly, $1,000 would cover Mia's new winter coat, the overdue electric bill, and maybe a tank of gas without him having to choose between them. Pride was a luxury he couldn't always afford. Thank you, he said finally. She nodded. I'm Elena, by the way. Adrian? I know, you said that when you got here. She smiled again, just barely. I wasn't really listening. He laughed, surprising himself. Fair. Elena walked him to the door. The rain had softened to a drizzle, and the air smelled clean and sharp. Adrian's truck sat waiting in the driveway, looking small and out of place next to the mansion. If you have any more issues, give me a call, Adrian said, handing her a business card he'd pulled from his wallet. It was bent at the corner and smudged with fingerprints, but it had his number. Elena took it, turning it over in her hands. I will. He stepped outside, then paused. Get someone to fix that gutter. It's going to rot the wood if you leave it. I'll add it to the list. Adrian nodded and headed to his truck. He was halfway there when Elena called out. Adrian? He turned. She stood in the doorway, framed by the light from inside. You were right about doing the job right. It shouldn't be rare, but it is. He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded again and climbed into his truck. The drive home took 40 minutes. By the time Adrian pulled into his driveway, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark except for the porch light he'd left on. He grabbed his toolbox and went inside, locking the door quietly behind him. Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, her knitting abandoned in her lap. Adrian gently woke her, thanked her, and paid her for the night. She shuffled out to her car, yawning, and drove off. Adrian climbed the stairs to Mia's room and eased the door open. She was asleep, just like he'd told her to be, but sure enough, there was a flashlight under her pillow and a book face down on the nightstand. He smiled, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, and kissed her forehead. "Love you, kiddo," he whispered. Then he went to his own room, peeled off his damp clothes, and collapsed into bed. His mind was still buzzing with the events of the night. Elena's house, the wiring, the way she'd looked at him like he'd done something extraordinary, when all he'd done was his job. He didn't know it yet, but that night was the beginning of something he couldn't have predicted. Something that would unravel his carefully controlled life and force him to confront fears he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten they were there. But for now, Adrian just closed his eyes and let sleep take him. 3 days later, his phone rang. Adrian was under the sink at the Martinez house, elbow deep in a tangle of pipes that should have been replaced a decade ago. He wiped his hands on his jeans and checked the screen. Unknown number. "Hello? Adrian, it's Elena. From the other night." He sat back on his heels, surprised. "Hey, everything okay with the house?" "The house is fine. The wiring's perfect." A pause. "I was calling about something else." "All right. There's a light fixture in one of the upstairs rooms. It's been flickering since yesterday. I know it's probably nothing, but you want me to check it out. If you have time." Adrian glanced at the mess of pipes in front of him. He was already behind schedule, and he had 2 more jobs lined up after this one. But something in Elena's voice, something hesitant, almost uncertain, made him pause. "Yeah," he said. "I can swing by tomorrow afternoon. Around 3? "That works. Thank you. No problem." The call ended. Adrian stared at his phone for a second, then shook his head and got back to work. The next afternoon, Adrian pulled up to Elena's house again. The rain was gone, replaced by pale sunlight that filtered through the trees. The place looked less intimidating in daylight, still massive, still expensive, but more like a home and less like a fortress. Elena answered the door herself this time. She was dressed casually again, jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked more rested than she had the other night. "Thanks for coming," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "No problem. Where's the light?" "Upstairs, second door on the left." Adrian followed her up the spiral staircase. The second floor was just as pristine as the first. Hardwood floors, white walls, minimalist furniture that looked like it belonged in a gallery. The room Elena led him to was smaller than he expected, tucked into a corner with windows overlooking the hillside. It was set up as a studio, with an easel in the center, canvases stacked against the walls, and shelves lined with paint tubes and brushes. "You paint?" Adrian asked, surprised. "When I have time." Elena gestured to the ceiling fixture, a simple modern piece that was indeed flickering faintly. "It started yesterday. I thought maybe the bulb was dying, but I replaced it, and it's still doing it." Adrian set his toolbox down and pulled out a stepladder he'd grabbed from his truck. He climbed up, removed the fixture cover, and inspected the wiring. It only took a minute to spot the issue, a loose connection where the wire met the fixture base. "Just needs to be tightened," he said, pulling out a screwdriver. "Happens sometimes when fixtures aren't installed properly." "Can you fix it?" "Already am." He tightened the connection, tested it, and replaced the cover. The light glowed steady and bright. "There you go," Adrian said, climbing down. Elena flipped the switch a few times, watching the light. "That's it?" "That's it," she laughed softly. "You make everything seem so simple. Most things are simpler than people think. We just overcomplicate them." Elena looked at him for a long moment, then gestured to the easel. "Want to see what I've been working on?" Adrian hesitated. He didn't know much about art, and he didn't want to say something stupid, but she was offering, and turning her down felt rude. "Sure," he said. She walked over to the easel and turned it toward him. The canvas showed a landscape, rolling hills under a stormy sky, painted in shades of gray and dark blue. It was rough, unfinished, but there was something raw and honest about it, like she'd been trying to capture a feeling instead of a place. "It's good," Adrian said, and he meant it. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not just saying it. I don't know anything about art, but I know when something feels real. This does. Elena's expression softened. Thank you. They stood there for a moment, the silence stretching but not uncomfortable. Then Adrian cleared his throat and picked up his toolbox. I should get going. I've got another job at 5. Right, of course. Elena walked him to the door, and this time when she paid him, it was exactly what he'd asked for. No extra. As Adrian climbed into his truck, Elena called out again. Adrian! He looked back. If you're ever in the area, you should stop by. For coffee or something. Not for work. He didn't know what to say. She was offering friendship, maybe, or something adjacent to it, and he didn't have much of either in his life. Just Mia, work, and the occasional conversation with Mrs. Chen. Yeah, he said. Maybe I will. Elena smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Adrian drove away, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something other than tired. Over the next few weeks, Elena called 3 more times. A breaker that wasn't really tripping. A smoke detector that beeped intermittently. An outlet that worked fine, but she wanted checked anyway. Adrian wasn't stupid. He knew what was happening. She was finding excuses to see him. And the strangest part was, he didn't mind. Each visit lasted a little longer. They'd start with the repair, quick and efficient, and then they'd talk. She'd make coffee, good coffee, the kind that came from beans she ground herself, and they'd sit in her kitchen or her studio and just exist in each other's space. She asked about Mia, and Adrian found himself talking about his daughter more than he usually did, how she'd started writing her own stories, how she wanted a dog but their landlord didn't allow pets, how she'd cried when she lost her first tooth because she thought it meant she was getting old. Elena listened like every word mattered, like she wasn't just being polite. And Adrian, in turn, started learning about her, how she'd inherited her wealth but felt trapped by it, how people saw her money before they saw her, how she'd bought this house hoping for peace and found loneliness instead. I thought if I had enough space, enough silence, I'd figure out who I was supposed to be, Elena said one afternoon, staring into her coffee cup. But all I figured out is that silence gets loud when you're alone with it too long. Adrian didn't have an answer for that, but he understood it. One evening, Elena called and didn't mention a repair. I'm making dinner, she said. Nothing fancy, just pasta. You want to come by? Adrian hesitated. This was different. This crossed a line from professional into something personal. I don't know, he said carefully. I've got Mia. Bring her. That stopped him. You sure? Yeah, I'd like to meet her. Adrian didn't know what to say. No one had invited both of them to anything in a long time. Most people saw a single dad and a kid as a complication. Okay, he said. We'll come. They arrived at 6:30. Mia was bouncing in her seat the whole drive, asking a million questions. Who was this lady? Why did she live in such a big house? Was she a princess? She's just a friend, Adrian said. Do you have a lot of friends, Dad? Not really. Then she must be special. Adrian didn't have a good response to that. Elena answered the door in an apron, flour dusted on her hands. She looked more relaxed than Adrian had ever seen her. You must be Mia, Elena said, crouching down to the little girl's level. Mia nodded shyly, half hiding behind Adrian's leg. I heard you like books, Elena continued. I have a whole library upstairs. Want to see it after dinner? Mia's eyes went wide. A whole library? A whole one. That was all it took. Mia's shyness evaporated and she started chattering about her favorite books. Chapter books now, she informed Elena proudly, not baby books. They ate at the kitchen table, and it was the most normal Adrian had felt in months. Elena had made spaghetti carbonara, and it was better than anything he could have managed. Mia told elaborate stories about school, complete with dramatic reenactments. Elena laughed, really laughed, not the polite kind, and Adrian found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. After dinner, Elena took Mia upstairs to the library. Adrian cleaned up the dishes, moving around the massive kitchen, like he belonged there. When Elena and Mia came back down, Mia was clutching 3 books Elena had let her borrow. She has first editions, Dad, Mia whispered, awestruck. First editions. On the drive home, Mia fell asleep in the back seat, the borrowed books stacked on her lap. Adrian glanced at her in the rearview mirror and felt something tighten in his chest. This was dangerous, not Elena herself, but what she represented. A life he couldn't give Mia, a world they didn't belong to. But for tonight, he let himself pretend they did. Whoa. The calls kept coming, sometimes for repairs, sometimes just to talk. And slowly, Adrian stopped questioning it. He stopped keeping his distance. Elena started showing up at his jobs, just passing through, she'd say, though her car was too expensive to be casually passing through the neighborhoods he worked in. She'd bring him coffee, sit on a toolbox, and watch him work. They'd talk about everything and nothing. You ever think about doing something else? Elena asked one day. Adrian was rewiring a light switch in a duplex that smelled like mildew. Like what? I don't know. You're smart. You could do anything. I do what I'm good at. You're good at a lot of things. He glanced at her. You don't know that. I know you're a good father. I know you're honest. I know you don't quit when things get hard. She paused. That's more than most people. Adrian didn't know how to respond to that, so he just kept working, but her words stayed with him. And for the first time in years, he started wondering if maybe, just maybe, there was more to his life than survival. It was late October when everything shifted. Elena invited Adrian to an event, some charity gala her family was hosting. She didn't ask. She just assumed he'd say yes. I can't, Adrian said when she brought it up over coffee in her kitchen. Why not? Because I don't belong at something like that. You belong anywhere I say you belong. Elena, Adrian, I'm not asking you to be someone else. I'm asking you to stand next to me for a few hours. That's it. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that it wasn't about standing next to her. It was about standing next to her in a room full of people who'd take one look at him and know he didn't fit. But the way she was looking at him, hopeful and maybe a little scared, made it hard to say no. Fine, he said, but I'm not wearing a tux. You don't have to. And I'm leaving if it gets weird. Deal. He regretted it the moment he agreed, but he couldn't take it back now. The night of the gala, Adrian stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the tie he'd borrowed from a buddy. He looked uncomfortable. He felt uncomfortable. Mia poked her head in. You look fancy, Dad. I look ridiculous. No, you look like a movie star. He smiled despite himself. Thanks, kiddo. Mrs. Chen arrived to watch Mia, and Adrian drove to Elena's house. She was waiting outside, wearing a dress that probably cost more than his truck. She looked stunning, untouchable. You clean up nice, she said, smiling. You too. They drove to the venue together, a hotel ballroom downtown, all chandeliers and marble floors. Adrian's stomach twisted the moment they walked in. Everyone was dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Everyone moved with a confidence that came from never having to worry about money. Elena looped her arm through his. Breathe. I'm breathing. You're holding your breath. He exhaled. They moved through the crowd, and Adrian felt every eye on him. Not on Elena, on him. The guy who didn't belong, the guy in the borrowed tie. Elena introduced him to people whose names he immediately forgot. They smiled politely, shook his hand, and moved on. A few asked what he did, and when he said electrician, their smiles tightened just a fraction. Adrian wanted to leave. But Elena's hand was on his arm, warm and steady, and he stayed. Halfway through the night, they ended up on a balcony overlooking the city. The noise from inside was muffled out here, and the air was cold and sharp. You okay? Elena asked. Not really. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed you into this. It's not your fault. Adrian leaned against the railing. I just don't fit here, Elena. You know that. You fit with me. That's not enough. She went quiet. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller. What do you mean? Adrian turned to face her. I mean, I'm not part of your world. I'm the guy you call when something breaks. I'm the guy you have coffee with when you're bored, but this? He gestured to the ballroom behind them. This is your life, not mine. That's not fair. Isn't it? He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Look, I like you. I really do. But I can't be the guy you keep hidden. The guy who doesn't show up in pictures. The guy who's good enough in private, but not in public. Elena's face went pale. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what this is. That's the problem. She opened her mouth to respond, But no words came, and in that silence, Adrian felt everything crumbling. "I should go," he said quietly. He turned and walked back inside, weaving through the crowd toward the exit. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Outside, the valet brought his truck around, and Adrian climbed in. His hands were shaking. He just walked away from the best thing that had happened to him in years. And he didn't know if it was the right choice or the worst mistake of his life. But as he drove home through the empty streets, one thing was clear. He couldn't keep living in two worlds. Something had to give. And he was terrified of what that something might be. Adrian didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation on the balcony over and over until the words lost their meaning. By the time dawn crept through the blinds, he'd convinced himself he'd done the right thing. Walking away was self-preservation. It was protecting Mia from getting attached to someone who'd eventually realize they'd made a mistake. It was smart. It didn't feel smart. He dragged himself out of bed, made coffee that tasted like mud, and got Mia ready for school. She chattered about a science project while he packed her lunch, but he barely heard her. His mind was somewhere else, on a balcony, in the cold, watching Elena's face go pale. "Dad, you're putting my sandwich in the wrong compartment," Mia said, tugging his sleeve. Adrian blinked. "What?" "The sandwich goes in the big part. The carrots go in the small part. You always do it that way." "Right. Sorry." He fixed it, zipped up her lunchbox, and handed it to her. "You ready? Are you okay?" He looked down at his daughter, 7 years old and already reading him like a book. "Yeah, kiddo, just tired." "You're always tired." "That's what happens when you get old." She rolled her eyes in that way kids do when they think their parents are being ridiculous. "You're not old. Mrs. Chen is old." Adrian smiled despite himself. "Don't let her hear you say that." They drove to school in silence. When he pulled up to the drop-off lane, Mia unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out right away. "Dad? Yeah? Is the fancy lady mad at you?" Adrian's chest tightened. "What makes you think that?" "Because you're sad, and you're only sad when something's wrong." He didn't know how to answer that, so he just reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'll figure it out. Don't worry about me." "I always worry about you." "Well, stop it. That's my job." Mia grinned, grabbed her backpack, and hopped out of the truck. She waved at him through the window, and he waved back. Then she disappeared into the crowd of kids, and Adrian was alone again. He drove to his first job of the day, a busted circuit at a laundromat. The owner was a guy named Rick, who never stopped talking. Normally Adrian didn't mind, but today every word felt like sandpaper. "You look like hell," Rick said when Adrian showed up. "Thanks. Rough night." Something like that. Rick didn't press, which Adrian appreciated. He got to work replacing the faulty breaker, and for a while the rhythm of it was enough to quiet his mind. But the moment he finished and climbed back into his truck, the noise came rushing back. His phone sat on the passenger seat. No missed calls, no messages. He told himself that was a good thing. Clean break, no drama. But it didn't feel good. 3 days passed. Adrian worked, picked up Mia, made dinner, helped with homework, and collapsed into bed. He didn't hear from Elena, and he didn't reach out. It was easier that way. Or at least that's what he kept telling himself. On the 4th day, his phone rang while he was installing a ceiling fan in someone's living room. He almost didn't answer. He was balanced on a ladder with a drill in one hand, but he glanced at the screen and saw Elena's name. His stomach dropped. He climbed down, set the drill on the floor, and answered. "Hello? Adrian?" Her voice sounded different, tight, controlled. "Can we talk? I'm working." "I know. I wouldn't call if it wasn't important." He hesitated. "What's going on?" "Not over the phone. Can you come by tonight? After you're done." "Elena, please." That word, small and quiet, cut through every wall he'd tried to build. He closed his eyes and exhaled. "Yeah, okay. I'll be there around 7. "Thank you." The call ended. Adrian stood there in the middle of someone's living room holding his phone like it might explode. This was a bad idea. He knew it was a bad idea. But he was going anyway. The rest of the day dragged. Adrian finished the ceiling fan, moved on to a kitchen rewire, and then sat in his truck in a grocery store parking lot, watching the clock tick closer to 7. He thought about calling her back and canceling. He thought about just not showing up. But at 6:45, he started the engine and drove to her house. The gate was already open when he arrived. He pulled up to the front door, killed the engine, and sat there for a minute, trying to figure out what he was going to say. Before he could come up with anything, the door opened and Elena stepped out. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She had on jeans and an old sweater with a hole in the sleeve. Somehow, she looked more real than she ever had. Adrian got out of the truck. "Hey! Hey!" She crossed her arms, not in a defensive way, more like she was holding herself together. "Thanks for coming. You said it was important." "It is." She glanced back at the house, then at him. "Can we walk? I don't want to do this inside." "Sure." They walked down the driveway and onto the road that wound through the hills. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was the kind of view people paid millions for, but Adrian barely noticed. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Elena broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said. At the gala." Adrian shoved his hands in his pockets. "Yeah?" "You were right. About some of it." He didn't know what to say to that, so he stayed quiet. "I haven't been fair to you," Elena continued. "I've been asking you to fit into my life without thinking about what that costs you, and I'm sorry." "You don't have to apologize." "Yes, I do." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "Because you're not wrong. I have kept you separate from the rest of my life. Not because I'm ashamed of you. I need you to know that. But because I didn't want to share you. I didn't want other people's opinions to ruin what we have." "What do we have, Elena?" The question came out rougher than he intended. "Because I don't know anymore." She flinched. "I don't know either. But I know I don't want to lose it." Adrian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You can't have it both ways. You can't keep me in the corner of your life and expect me to be okay with it." "I'm not asking you to stay in the corner. I'm asking you to give me a chance to do this right." "What does that even mean?" "It means I want you in my life. All of it. Not just the easy parts." Her voice cracked just slightly. "But I need you to meet me halfway. I need you to stop assuming I'm going to walk away." "I'm not assuming. I'm being realistic." "No, you're being scared." She stepped closer. "And I get it. I'm scared too. But I'm not running. So why are you?" That hit harder than he expected. Adrian opened his mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because she was right. He was running. He'd been running since the moment he realized what she meant to him. "I have a kid," he said finally. "I can't afford to make mistakes." "I'm not a mistake." "I didn't say you were." "Then what are you saying?" Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the same fear he felt reflected back. She wasn't some untouchable rich woman. She was just a person, scared and uncertain, and hoping he wouldn't break her heart. "I'm saying I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "I don't know how to be with someone like you." "Someone like me?" "Someone who has options, someone who could walk away and not look back." Elena's expression softened. "You think I have options?" "Don't you? Not ones that matter." She reached out and took his hand, her fingers cold against his. "Adrian, I don't want options. I want you." He didn't know what to say. So he just stood there, holding her hand, feeling the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on both of them. "Come inside," Elena said quietly. "Please, let me show you something." He should have said no. He should have gotten in his truck and driven away. But instead he nodded. They walked back to the house in silence. Elena led him inside and up the stairs to her studio. The room was dimly lit, the easel in the center draped with a cloth. "I've been working on something," Elena said, pulling the cloth away. The canvas underneath took Adrian's breath away. It wasn't a landscape this time. It was a portrait of him. He was sitting on a toolbox, a wrench in his hand, looking off to the side like he was thinking about something. The detail was incredible. She'd captured the tiredness in his eyes, the rough edges, the way his shoulders carried weight even when he was sitting still. "When did you—" "I started it after the first time you came to fix the wiring. I've been adding to it every time I see you." She stood beside him, staring at the painting. "I wanted to see you the way I see you, not the way you see yourself." Adrian couldn't speak. He'd never seen himself like this, like someone worth paying attention to, like someone worth remembering. Why? He finally managed. Because you matter to me, and I wanted you to know that. He turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in her face was almost too much. She'd put herself out there, completely, honestly, and now she was waiting for him to do the same. I don't know if I can be what you need, Adrian said. I don't need you to be anything but yourself. That might not be enough. It's enough for me. Something in Adrian's chest cracked open. All the walls he'd built, all the reasons he'd given himself to stay away, they didn't hold anymore. Because standing in front of him was someone who saw him, really saw him, and wasn't running. Okay? He said. Elena blinked. Okay? Yeah, okay. He took a breath. I'm still scared, and I still think this is a bad idea. But I'm done running. A smile broke across Elena's face, small at first, then wider. Yeah? Yeah. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Adrian hesitated for just a second, then hugged her back. She smelled like paint and coffee, and she fit against him like she'd always belonged there. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For giving this a chance. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet of the studio. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt like maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The days after that conversation shifted into something Adrian didn't have a name for. It wasn't a relationship exactly, at least not in any traditional sense, but it was something. Elena started calling him not because she needed something fixed, but because she wanted to hear his voice. They'd talk while he drove between jobs, her voice crackling through the Bluetooth speaker as she told him about a painting she was working on or a meeting that had gone sideways. I don't understand half of what you're talking about, Adrian said one afternoon, stuck in traffic on the interstate. That's okay. I don't understand half of what you're talking about either. I fix electrical panels. There's not much to understand. You say that, but every time you explain how circuits work, I get lost after the first sentence. He smiled. Fair point. Their conversations were easy in a way Adrian wasn't used to. There was no pressure to fill the silence, no expectation to be anything other than what they were. And slowly, carefully, they started weaving their lives together. Elena came to one of Mia's soccer games. She sat in the bleachers with the other parents, cheering too loud when Mia scored a goal. Afterward, Mia ran over, flushed and grinning, and Elena high-fived her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Did you see me, Dad? Did you see? I saw, kiddo. You were amazing. Mia turned to Elena. Did you see? I saw. You're faster than half the kids on the other team. Coach says I should play striker next season. You should. You'd be great at it. Adrian watched the two of them talk, and something warm settled in his chest. Mia didn't get attached to people easily. She'd learned early that people left. But with Elena, she was different, open, trusting. It terrified him. One night, after Mia had gone to bed, Adrian sat on his back porch with a beer he wasn't really drinking. His phone buzzed. Elena. You okay? Adrian. Yeah. Why? Elena. You were quiet after the game. Adrian. Just thinking. Elena. About? He stared at the screen, debating how much to say. Then he just typed the truth. Adrian. About how good you are with Mia, and how scared that makes me. The three dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, a response came through. Elena. I'm scared too, but I'm not going anywhere. Adrian read the message 3 times, then set his phone down and stared out at the dark yard. He wanted to believe her, but belief required trust, and trust was something he'd run out of a long time ago. A week later, Elena invited them to dinner again. This time, she cooked lasagna, and Mia helped her layer the noodles and cheese. Adrian watched from the doorway, arms crossed, as Elena showed Mia how to spread the sauce evenly. You're good at this, Mia said. At cooking? At being nice. Elena paused, then smiled. Thank you. You're pretty good at it too. Dad says I get it from my mom. The room went quiet. Adrian's jaw tightened. Mia didn't talk about Sarah much, mostly because Adrian didn't, but every once in a while she'd bring her up, casual and light, like she was mentioning the weather. Elena didn't skip a beat. Your mom must have been a really special person. She was. Mia spooned more sauce onto the lasagna. But she left. So now it's just me and Dad. That must have been hard. It was, but Dad takes good care of me. Elena glanced at Adrian, and he saw something in her eyes he couldn't quite name. Understanding, maybe. Or sadness. Or both. They ate dinner on the back patio, the sky streaked with pink and gold. Mia talked nonstop about school, her friends, a book she was reading about dragons. Elena listened like every word mattered, asking questions and laughing in all the right places. After Mia went to explore the yard chasing fireflies with a mason jar Elena had given her, Adrian and Elena sat in silence. "She's amazing," Elena said. "She is. You've done a good job with her." Adrian shrugged. "I do what I can." "It's more than that. She's confident, kind, happy. That doesn't happen by accident." He didn't know how to respond to that. Compliments about his parenting always felt strange, like people were praising him for doing the bare minimum. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Sure." "What happened with her mom?" Adrian exhaled slowly. He'd been expecting this question eventually. "She left when Mia was 4. Just packed a bag one day and said she couldn't do it anymore." "Do what?" "Be a parent. Be married. Be stuck in a life she didn't want." He picked at the label on his beer bottle. "She said she felt like she was drowning and we were the anchor pulling her down." Elena winced. "That's awful." "Yeah." "Do you still talk to her?" "No, she moved to California last I heard. Sends a birthday card sometimes, but that's it." "Does Mia ask about her?" "Not as much as she used to." Adrian glanced at his daughter, running through the grass with the jar held high. "I think she's made peace with it, or at least as much peace as a 7-year-old can make." "And you?" He looked at Elena. "What about me? Have you made peace with it?" Adrian thought about that. "I don't know. I'm not angry anymore, if that's what you're asking. But I don't trust easy, and I don't let people get close. Except me." "Yeah, except you." Elena reached across the table and took his hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For letting me in." He squeezed her hand, and for a moment, everything felt simple. Just two people sitting on a patio, watching fireflies blink in the growing dark. But simple never lasted. The next week, Elena asked Adrian to meet her family. "Absolutely not," he said. They were sitting in his truck outside a job site. Elena had stopped by with coffee, and the conversation had taken a turn he didn't like. "Why not?" Elena asked. "Because I've met people like your family before. They're going to take one look at me and decide I'm not good enough." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Elena set her coffee down. "My family doesn't define me. Or us." "Maybe not. But they're still part of your life. And I'm not going to sit through a dinner where everyone's judging me." "They won't judge you." "Elena, come on, you know they will." She went quiet, and Adrian immediately felt like an asshole. But he wasn't going to lie to make her feel better. "Fine," Elena said finally. "You don't have to meet them, but at some point you're going to have to stop assuming the worst." "I'm not assuming. I'm being realistic." "There's a difference between realistic and defeatist." Adrian didn't have an answer for that. Elena finished her coffee, kissed him on the cheek, and got out of the truck. He watched her drive away, and the knot in his stomach tightened. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the conversation, trying to figure out if he'd been unfair. Maybe he was being defeatist. Maybe he was letting his own baggage poison something good. Or maybe he was just protecting himself. The next morning, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Adrian Cole?" A woman's voice, polished and cold. "Yeah, who's this?" "My name is Catherine Voss. I'm Elena's mother." Adrian sat up straight. "How did you get my number?" "That's not important. What's important is that we need to talk." "About what?" "About your relationship with my daughter." Adrian's grip tightened on the phone. "With all due respect, that's none of your business. Everything involving my daughter is my business." Catherine's tone didn't shift. It stayed perfectly controlled, like she was discussing the weather. "I'd like to meet with you. Today, if possible." "I'm working." "I'm sure you can make time." "And if I don't want to?" "Then I'll assume you're not serious about Elena, and I'll advise her accordingly." Adrian's jaw clenched. This woman didn't know him. She didn't know anything about him. But she was already making judgments, already pulling strings. "Fine," he said. "Where?" Catherine gave him the address of a cafe downtown. 2 o'clock. Don't be late." The call ended. Adrian stared at his phone, anger simmering under his skin. He thought about calling Elena, telling her what her mother had done. But something stopped him. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe he just wanted to get this over with. At 2 o'clock, Adrian walked into the cafe. It was one of those places with exposed brick and artisanal coffee that cost more than his lunch. Catherine Voss sat at a corner table, back straight, hands folded in her lap. She looked exactly how Adrian had imagined, perfectly put together, every detail calculated. He sat down across from her. "Let's get this over with." Catherine didn't smile. "I appreciate you coming. I didn't have much choice." "Everyone has a choice, Mr. Cole." Adrian leaned back in his chair. "What do you want?" "I want to understand your intentions with my daughter." "My intentions?" "Yes, what you hope to gain from this relationship." Adrian's anger flared. "I'm not trying to gain anything. Everyone wants something." "Not me." Catherine studied him, her expression unreadable. "You're an electrician, single father, living paycheck to paycheck, I assume." So my daughter is worth a considerable amount of money. Forgive me for being cautious." Adrian stood up. "I'm done here." "Sit down, Mr. Cole." "No, I'm not going to sit here and let you accuse me of being a gold digger." He leaned forward, keeping his voice low. "I don't care about Elena's money. I care about her. And if you can't see that, then this conversation is pointless." He turned and walked out, his heart pounding. Behind him, he heard Catherine call his name, but he didn't stop. He got in his truck and drove. He didn't know where he was going, he just needed to move. Eventually, he ended up at a park near Mia's school. He sat on a bench, staring at the empty playground, trying to calm down. His phone buzzed. "Elena. Elena. My mom called. What happened?" Adrian. "Ask her." Elena. "I'm asking you." He hesitated, then typed out the whole story. The phone call, the meeting, the accusations. When he finished, he hit send and waited. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. "Elena. I'm so sorry. I didn't know she was going to do that." Adrian. "It's not your fault." Elena. "Yes, it is. She wouldn't have if I hadn't told her about you." Adrian. "What did you tell her?" Elena. "That I'm in love with you." Adrian stared at the screen. His chest tightened, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. She loved him. He didn't know what to do with that. Didn't know if he was ready for it. But sitting there, alone on a bench in an empty park, he realized something. He loved her too. And that terrified him more than anything. Adrian didn't respond to Elena's message right away. He sat on that bench for another 20 minutes, staring at the words on his phone screen until they blurred together. She loved him. She'd told her mother she loved him. And now her mother thought he was some kind of opportunist trying to cash in on her daughter's wealth. He wanted to throw his phone into the bushes. Instead, he typed back. Adrian. We need to talk. In person. Elena. When? Adrian. Tonight, after I put Mia to bed. Elena. I'll be waiting. He drove home in a fog, his mind churning through every possible outcome of the conversation they were about to have. None of them felt good. By the time he pulled into his driveway, his hands were shaking. Mia was at the kitchen table doing homework when he walked in. Mrs. Chen was washing dishes, humming something off-key. Hey, kiddo, Adrian said, dropping his keys on the counter. Dad, what's 12 times 7? 84. Mia scribbled the answer down. Thanks. Adrian poured himself a glass of water and drank it in 3 long gulps. Mrs. Chen glanced at him, one eyebrow raised. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said. Just a long day. Every day is long for you. She dried her hands on a towel. You need to take better care of yourself. I'm fine. You're not fine, but you're stubborn, so I won't argue. She patted his shoulder on her way out. I'll see you tomorrow. Adrian managed a smile. Thanks, Mrs. Chen. After she left, he helped Mia finish her homework, made her a grilled cheese for dinner, and sat with her while she ate. She talked about a boy in her class who'd gotten in trouble for bringing a frog to school, and Adrian nodded in all the right places, even though he wasn't really listening. "Dad, are you okay?" He blinked. "Yeah. Why?" "You're doing that thing where you look at me, but you're not really looking." Adrian sighed. "Sorry. I've got a lot on my mind." "Is it about Elena?" "What makes you think that?" Mia shrugged. "You always get weird when it's about her." "I don't get weird." "Yes, you do. You get all quiet and thinky. Thinky's not a word." "It should be." Adrian smiled despite himself. "Finish your sandwich." After Mia brushed her teeth and climbed into bed, Adrian sat on the edge of her mattress and pulled the blanket up to her chin. "You like Elena, right?" he asked. "Yeah, she's nice, and she has good books." "If she was around more, would that be okay with you?" Mia studied him with those sharp 7-year-old eyes that saw way too much. "Do you love her?" The question hit him square in the chest. "I don't know." "That's a weird answer." "It's a complicated question." "Not really. Either you do or you don't." "It's not that simple when you're a grown-up." Mia wrinkled her nose. "Being a grown-up sounds stupid." "Sometimes it is." Adrian kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep." "Dad?" "Yeah?" "If you do love her, you should tell her, because people leave if you don't tell them stuff." Adrian's throat tightened. He didn't know if she was talking about Sarah or just making an observation, but either way, it cut deep. "I'll keep that in mind," he said quietly. He turned off her light and closed the door most of the way, leaving it cracked like she liked. Then he stood in the hallway for a moment, trying to pull himself together. At 9:30, he drove to Elena's house. The gate was open again, and the lights were on in every window. He parked and walked to the front door, his heart hammering. Elena answered before he could knock. She looked tired, hair loose, no makeup, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. She'd been crying. He could see it in the redness around her eyes. "Come in," she said. They went to the kitchen. Elena poured 2 glasses of wine and handed him one. Adrian set it on the counter without drinking. "I'm sorry about my mother," Elena said. "I didn't know she was going to ambush you like that." "It's not your fault." "Yes, it is. I should have warned you. She's—" Elena paused, searching for the right word. "Protective. In the worst possible way. She thinks I'm using you." "I know. And she's probably not the only one." Elena looked at him. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe she has a point." "Adrian, not about the money. I don't give a damn about your money." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "But about the rest of it, about whether this makes sense." "Of course it makes sense." "Does it?" "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like we're forcing something that doesn't fit." Elena's face went pale. "You don't mean that." "I don't know what I mean." Adrian's voice cracked, and he hated himself for it. "I just know that your mother looked at me today like I was dirt on her shoe, and she's going to keep looking at me like that. And so is everyone else in your world." "I don't care what they think." "You should. Because eventually, it's going to wear you down, and you're going to realize you could do better." "Better than what? Better than someone who's kind and honest and good with my—" She stopped herself, but the words hung in the air anyway. Adrian stared at her. "Good with your what?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Nothing. Forget it." "No, say it." "I was going to say good with my future." Her voice broke. "If we have one." Adrian felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. She wasn't just talking about them dating. She was talking about something permanent, something that involved Mia and houses and the kind of life he'd stopped believing in years ago. "Elena, I can't—" "Can't what?" "Can't imagine a future with me? Or can't let yourself?" "Both, I don't know." He pressed his palms against the counter, trying to steady himself. "I've got a kid to think about. I can't just jump into something because it feels good right now." "You think this is just about feeling good?" "I think you don't know what you're signing up for." "Then tell me. Explain it to me." Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the desperation in her eyes. She wanted him to open up, to let her in all the way. But he didn't know how. "Being with me means waking up at 5 in the morning because I've got a job 2 hours away," he said. "It means fixing frozen pipes and blown fuses and eating spaghetti out of a box because that's all I have time to make. It means dealing with a 7-year-old who has nightmares and asks questions I don't know how to answer. It's not romantic. It's not easy. And it sure as hell isn't the kind of life you're used to. You think I can't handle that? I think you shouldn't have to. Elena stepped closer, her hands shaking. You don't get to decide what I can handle. You don't get to push me away because you're scared. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. You're terrified, and I get it. But I'm not Sarah. I'm not going to wake up one day and decide this is too hard. The mention of Sarah hit him like a punch. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I'm here, right now, choosing you. And I'm going to keep choosing you even when it's hard. Even when your mother calls me at midnight, asking why I'm wasting my time. Even when people like my mother try to convince me I'm making a mistake. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So stop trying to protect me from something that isn't going to happen. Adrian wanted to believe her. He wanted it so badly it hurt. But the voice in his head, the one that had kept him safe for 3 years, kept screaming that this was temporary, that she'd leave, that everyone left. I told you I loved you, Elena said quietly, and you didn't say it back. I know. Do you love me? Adrian closed his eyes. The truth sat on his tongue, heavy and terrifying. Yes. Then why won't you say it? Because saying it makes it real, and real things can break. Elena reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cold. Everything breaks eventually, Adrian, but that doesn't mean it's not worth having. He looked down at their intertwined hands. Hers were small and soft, untouched by the kind of work he did every day. His were calloused and scarred, rough around the edges. They didn't match. They shouldn't fit, but they did. I don't know how to do this, he said. Neither do I, but we can figure it out together. Adrian pulled his hand away. What if we can't? Elena flinched like he'd slapped her. Then I guess we don't. The silence that followed was suffocating. Adrian wanted to take the words back, wanted to close the distance between them and tell her everything would be okay. But he didn't know if that was true. And he was tired of lying. I should go, he said. Adrian, I need to think, and I can't do that here. Elena didn't argue. She just watched as he walked to the door, her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding the pieces together. Adrian paused with his hand on the doorknob. I do love you. I just don't know if that's enough. He left before she could respond. The drive home felt like it took hours. Adrian's mind replayed the conversation on a loop, dissecting every word, every pause. He'd screwed it up. He knew he'd screwed it up. But he didn't know how to fix it without lying to her or to himself. When he got home, the house was dark. He sat in his truck for a while, staring at the porch light before finally going inside. He didn't sleep. He just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how he'd managed to ruin the best thing that had happened to him in years. The next morning, Mia noticed. You look terrible, she said over breakfast. Thanks. Did something happen with Elena? Adrian poured himself more coffee. We had a fight. About what? Grown-up stuff. Mia stabbed her cereal with a spoon. That's a dumb answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Are you going to fix it? I don't know. Why not? Because I don't know how. Mia looked at him like he was the most frustrating person in the world. You fix stuff for a living, Dad. How is this different? Because people aren't circuits. You can't just rewire them and hope they work. But you can talk to them, and you can say you're sorry if you messed up. Adrian set his coffees down. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't listen. He smiled despite himself. Fair point. After he dropped Mia off at school, Adrian drove to his first job of the day, a busted outlet at a dentist's office. The receptionist was chatty, asking about his weekend, his daughter, whether he'd seen the game. Adrian answered on autopilot, his mind somewhere else entirely. By noon, he'd finished 3 jobs and still hadn't heard from Elena. He told himself that was fine. She needed space. He needed space. This was healthy. It didn't feel healthy. At 2 o'clock, his phone rang. He expected it to be another client. Instead, it was a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Richard Voss, Elena's father. Adrian's stomach dropped. How did you get my number? My wife gave it to me. I'd like to meet with you. I already met with your wife. I'm not interested in round 2. This isn't an ambush. I just want to talk. About what? About my daughter, and about whether you're serious about her. Adrian leaned against his truck, exhausted. With all due respect, sir, that's between me and Elena. You're right, it is. Richard's tone was calmer than Catherine's had been, less accusatory. But humor me, please. One conversation, that's all I'm asking. Adrian didn't want to. He wanted to hang up and pretend this whole mess didn't exist. But something in Richard's voice, something that sounded almost human, made him hesitate. Fine. Where? Richard gave him an address. Not a cafe this time, but a park near the waterfront. Adrian agreed and hung up, already regretting it. An hour later, he pulled into the parking lot. Richard Voss was sitting on a bench overlooking the water, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked older than Adrian had expected. Gray hair, lines around his eyes, the kind of tired that came from years of carrying weight. Adrian sat down beside him. Let's get this over with. Richard didn't turn to look at him. My wife thinks you're after Elena's money. I know. I don't. That caught Adrian off guard. Why not? Because if you were, you would have been a lot nicer to Catherine. Gold diggers don't walk out of meetings. Adrian snorted. Fair point. They sat in silence for a moment, watching a few kids chase each other across the grass. Elena told me she loves you, Richard said. She told me that too. And what did you say? I told her I loved her back. But? Adrian exhaled. But I don't know if that's enough. Richard finally looked at him. You think love isn't enough? I think love doesn't pay bills. It doesn't fix broken things. It doesn't make two people from completely different worlds suddenly fit together. You're right. It doesn't. Richard leaned back against the bench. But it's a start. A start to what? To building something. My wife and I, we came from different worlds too. She was old money. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 siblings. When we got married, her family thought I was beneath her. Adrian glanced at him. What changed their minds? Nothing. They still think that. Richard smiled faintly. But I stopped caring what they thought. And so did she. We built our life together, and we didn't ask for permission. That's different. How? Because you're both... Adrian gestured vaguely. You're both successful. You both ended up in the same place. Not at first. I worked construction for 15 years before I started my own company. Catherine's family hated me the entire time. But we made it work because we wanted to, not because it was easy. Adrian stared out at the water. I have a daughter. I can't afford to take risks. Being happy isn't a risk. It's a choice. Easy for you to say. Richard stood, brushing off his pants. You're right. It is easy for me to say, because I've already made that choice. And I don't regret it. He looked down at Adrian. The question is, will you? He walked away before Adrian could respond. Adrian sat on that bench for another half hour, turning Richard's words over in his mind. Being happy isn't a risk. It's a choice. But what if the choice led to pain? What if he let Elena in completely and she left anyway? What if Mia got hurt? His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Elena, there's an event tomorrow night, a fundraiser my family hosts every year. I want you to come. Adrian, I don't think that's a good idea. Elena, I'm not asking you to come as my date. I'm asking you to come because I want you there, because I'm tired of hiding what we are. Adrian, what are we? Elena, I don't know, but I want to find out. And I can't do that if you keep running. Adrian stared at the message. This was it. The moment where he had to decide whether to step into her world completely or walk away for good. He thought about Mia's words. People leave if you don't tell them stuff. He thought about Richard. Being happy isn't a risk, it's a choice. And he thought about Elena, standing in her studio, showing him a painting of himself, telling him he mattered. He typed back. Adrian, what time? Elena, 7. And Adrian? Adrian, yeah? Elena, thank you. He slipped his phone into his pocket and stood up. He didn't know if he was making the right choice. But for the first time in years, he was choosing something other than fear. And that had to count for something. The next day moved in slow motion. Adrian went through the motions of his jobs, replacing a panel at a hardware store, fixing faulty wiring in an old apartment building. But his mind was somewhere else entirely. He kept checking his phone, half expecting Elena to text and tell him not to come. She never did. By the time he picked up Mia from school, his nerves were shot. "You're doing that thing again," Mia said from the back seat. "What thing?" "The thinky thing. Where you're here, but you're not here." Adrian glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I've got that event tonight, the one I told you about." "The fancy one with Elena's family?" "Yeah." "Are you scared?" He almost lied, almost told her he was fine, but Mia could smell a lie from a mile away. "A little." "Why?" "Because her family doesn't think I'm good enough for her." Mia was quiet for a moment, then she said, "That's dumb." Adrian smiled despite himself. "Yeah, it is. You're the best dad in the world. If they can't see that, they're stupid." "Thanks, kiddo." "Are you still going?" "Yeah, I said I would." "Good, because running away is for babies." Adrian laughed. "Where'd you hear that?" "Mrs. Chen. She says it all the time." He pulled into their driveway and killed the engine. Mia unbuckled and climbed out, but before she ran inside, she turned back. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Just be yourself. Elena likes you the way you are. So her family probably will too." Adrian's throat tightened. "I hope you're right." "I'm always right." She grinned and ran inside. Adrian sat in the truck for another minute, letting her words settle over him. Just be yourself. It sounded so simple, but simple didn't mean easy. At 6:30, Adrian stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the same borrowed tie from the gala. He'd ironed his only dress shirt and polished his boots until they didn't look completely out of place. It wasn't much, but it was the best he could do. Mrs. Chen had agreed to stay late with Mia. She'd given Adrian a long look when he told her where he was going, then patted his cheek like he was one of her grandkids. "You'll do fine," she'd said. "Just don't let them push you around." "I won't. And don't drink too much. Rich people always have too much wine." Adrian had smiled. "I'll keep that in mind." Now, standing alone in his bathroom, he wondered if he should have just stayed home. But he'd made a promise, and he didn't break promises. He grabbed his keys and drove to Elena's house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. When he pulled up to the gate, it was already open. He drove through and parked near the entrance. Elena stepped out before he could knock. She was wearing a long navy dress, simple but elegant, her hair pulled back. She looked beautiful in a way that made Adrian's chest ache. "You came," she said, and there was relief in her voice. "I said I would." She walked down the steps and stopped in front of him. "You look good." "I look uncomfortable." "That too." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Are you ready?" "No, but let's go anyway." They drove in Elena's car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Adrian made in a year. He sat in the passenger seat, watching the city lights blur past, trying to ignore the knot in his stomach. "My family is going to be there," Elena said quietly. "All of them." "I figured. My mother's going to say things, probably to you, definitely about you." "I can handle it." "Can you?" She glanced at him. "Because if it gets to be too much, we can leave. I don't care what they think." "You should care. They're your family." "You're—" She stopped herself, her hands tightening on the wheel. "I'm what?" Elena shook her head. "Nothing. Forget it." But Adrian couldn't forget it, because whatever she'd been about to say hung in the air between them, heavy and unspoken. The event was being held at a hotel downtown, one of those old buildings with marble columns and crystal chandeliers that looked like it belonged in a different century. Valets in crisp uniforms opened the car doors, and Elena handed over her keys without a second thought. Adrian followed her inside, his boots echoing on the polished floor. The ballroom was already packed. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns that probably cost more than Adrian's truck. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres that looked too fancy to eat. Adrian felt every eye turn toward them as they entered, or maybe just toward him. Elena looped her arm through his. "Breathe." "I'm breathing." "You're holding your breath again," he exhaled. "Happy?" "Getting there." They moved through the crowd, and Adrian tried to ignore the stares, the whispers. A few people smiled at Elena and nodded at him, polite but distant. Others didn't even bother hiding their curiosity. Catherine Voss appeared out of nowhere, gliding toward them with the precision of a missile. She was wearing a silver gown, her hair swept up, diamonds glittering at her throat. She looked at Adrian like he was a stain on her daughter's dress. "Elena," Catherine said, ignoring Adrian entirely. "I didn't realize you were bringing a guest. I told you I was. I thought you were joking." Elena's jaw tightened. "I wasn't." Catherine's gaze finally shifted to Adrian. "Mr. Cole, how nice to see you again." "Mrs. Voss?" Adrian's voice was flat. "I trust you're enjoying yourself?" "I just got here." "Well, I'm sure you'll find it educational." She turned back to Elena. "Your uncle's been asking for you. He's by the bar. I'll find him later." "Elena, later, Mother." Catherine's smile thinned, but she didn't argue. She drifted away, and Adrian felt like he'd just survived the first round of a boxing match. "I'm sorry," Elena said quietly. "Don't be. I expected worse." "The night's not over yet." They made their way to the bar, and Elena ordered them both drinks. Adrian took a sip of whiskey and immediately regretted it. It was smooth and expensive, the kind of thing he'd never buy for himself. He set the glass down. "You okay?" Elena asked. "Yeah, just not used to this." "I know. I'm sorry for dragging you here." "You didn't drag me. I chose to come." She looked at him, and for a moment the noise of the ballroom faded. "Why?" "Because you asked me to." "That's it?" Adrian hesitated. "And because I'm tired of being scared." Elena's eyes softened. She reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm against his. "Me too." They stood like that for a moment, holding on to each other in the middle of a room full of people who didn't understand them. And for that moment, it was enough. Then Richard Voss appeared, breaking the spell. "Elena," he said, smiling. "There you are." He turned to Adrian and extended a hand. "Adrian, good to see you again." Adrian shook it, surprised by the warmth in Richard's grip. "You too, sir." "Please, call me Richard. Sir makes me feel old." He glanced between them. "I hope you're both enjoying the evening." "We just got here," Elena said. "Well, don't let your mother monopolize you. She has a habit of doing that." Richard winked at Adrian. "And don't let her intimidate you. She's all bark." "I'll keep that in mind." Richard clapped Adrian on the shoulder and disappeared into the crowd. Elena exhaled. "I think he likes you," she said. "Or he's good at pretending." "No, he likes you. Trust me." They spent the next hour moving through the ballroom. Elena introduced Adrian to people, investors, business partners, family friends, and he shook hands and made small talk, feeling like an actor playing a role he hadn't rehearsed. Most people were polite, if distant. A few asked what he did, and when he said electrician, their smiles faltered just slightly. One man, a cousin of Elena's, tall and smug in a custom tux, looked Adrian up and down like he was assessing a used car. "Electrician," the cousin repeated. "That's interesting." "It pays the bills," Adrian said evenly. "I'm sure it does." The cousin's tone suggested he thought otherwise. "How did you two meet?" "I fixed her wiring," Adrian said. The cousin blinked. "You're serious?" "Very." Elena stepped in, her voice sharp. "Adrian saved me from burning my house down. I'd say that's a pretty good start." The cousin's smile tightened. "Of course. Well, it was nice meeting you, Adrian." He walked away. Elena turned to Adrian, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry about him. He's always been an ass. It's fine." "No, it's not. He had no right." "Elena, I knew what I was walking into." Adrian took a breath. "I'm not going to pretend it doesn't sting, but I'm not going to let it ruin the night either." She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "You're stronger than you think. Or just stubborn." "Maybe both." They found a table near the back and sat down. The speeches started, people thanking donors, talking about charitable causes, making jokes that only the crowd understood. Adrian listened with half an ear, watching Elena instead. She looked tired, like the weight of the evening was pressing down on her. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I hate these things." "Then why do you come?" "Because I have to. It's part of the job." "What job?" She gestured vaguely at the room. "This. Being a Voss. Playing the part." "You don't have to play anything." "Yes, I do. If I don't, they'll—" She stopped, shaking her head. "Never mind." "They'll what?" Elena looked at him, and there was something raw in her eyes. They'll decide I'm not worth the trouble, and they'll cut me out. Adrian frowned. Your family would do that? My mother would, in a heartbeat. Over what? Over me? Over anything that doesn't fit the plan. Adrian didn't know what to say. He'd known Elena came from money, but he hadn't realized how suffocating it was, how much control her family had over her life. Then maybe it's time to stop playing, he said. Elena laughed bitterly. You make it sound so easy. It's not easy, but it's possible. Is it? Yeah, because I did it. She looked at him, confused. What do you mean? When Sarah left, everyone had an opinion. My family, her family, people at church. They all thought they knew what was best for me and Mia, and for a while I listened. I tried to do what they expected. He paused, but eventually I realized they didn't have to live my life. I did. So I stopped asking for permission and started making my own choices. Elena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, And how'd that work out? Some days it's great, some days it's hell, but at least it's mine. She reached across the table and took his hand. I want that. I want something that's mine. Then take it. It's not that simple. It never is, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. Before Elena could respond, Catherine appeared again, her expression icy. Elena, I need to speak with you, alone. Elena didn't let go of Adrian's hand. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of him. Catherine's lips thinned. Fine. I've been hearing whispers all night, people asking about your companion, and I need you to understand how this looks. I don't care how it looks. Well, you should, because this family has a reputation to maintain. And what about my happiness? Does that matter? Of course it matters. But you can't build happiness on a foundation this fragile. Adrian felt his chest tighten. He started to pull his hand away, but Elena held on. You don't know him, Elena said, her voice shaking. You don't know what he's been through or what he's built. You just see someone who doesn't fit your idea of acceptable, and you've already decided he's not good enough. I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to control me, and I'm done letting you. Catherine's face went pale. Elena, I love him, Mother, and I don't care if that doesn't fit your plan. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Adrian's heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone in the room could hear it. Catherine looked between them, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Elena exhaled, her hand still gripping Adrian's. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that here. You don't have to apologize. Yes, I do. I just made everything worse. No, you didn't. You stood up for yourself. That takes guts. She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. I don't feel very gutsy right now. Adrian stood and pulled her to her feet. Come on, let's get out of here. They left the ballroom and walked out into the cool night air. The city stretched out below them, lights twinkling like stars. Elena leaned against the railing, her shoulders shaking. I can't believe I just did that, she said. I can. I told my mother I loved you, in front of everyone. Yeah, you did, and you didn't say it back. Adrian stepped closer. Because I didn't need to. You already know. Elena turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. Do I? He reached out and wiped a tear away with his thumb. Yeah, you do. Then say it, please. Adrian took a breath. He'd spent so long protecting himself, building walls, keeping people at a distance. But standing here with Elena, broken and brave and choosing him anyway, he realized the walls didn't matter anymore. I love you, he said quietly. I'm terrible at this, and I'm probably going to screw it up 100 times, but I love you. Elena let out a shaky laugh and threw her arms around him. He held her tight, feeling the tension drain out of both of them. I'm sorry, she whispered, for dragging you into this mess. I walked in on my own. I know, but still. They stood like that for a while, holding each other under the stars. Then Elena pulled back, wiping her eyes. I should take you home, she said. Probably. They walked back to the car in silence. The ride home felt different, quieter, but not uncomfortable. When Elena pulled up to Adrian's house, she didn't turn off the engine. I'll call you tomorrow, she said. Okay. And Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for being here, for not running. He leaned over and kissed her, soft and slow, like a promise. I'm not going anywhere. She smiled, and for the first time all night it reached her eyes. Adrian got out of the car and watched her drive away. Then he went inside, kicked off his boots, and collapsed onto the couch. His phone buzzed, a text from Elena. Elena, I meant what I said. I love you. Adrian, I know. I love you too. Elena, even after tonight? Adrian, especially after tonight. He set his phone down and closed his eyes. The night had been a disaster in some ways, tense and awkward and full of judgment. But in the ways that mattered, it had been perfect. Because for the first time, he and Elena had stopped hiding. They'd stood together in front of the people who wanted to pull them apart, and they hadn't flinched. And that was worth more than any approval they'd never get. The next morning, Adrian woke to his phone ringing. He fumbled for it, half asleep, and answered without checking the screen. Hello? Adrian, it's Richard. Can we meet? Adrian sat up, instantly awake. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just need to talk to you. It's important. Okay, when? This morning, if you can. Same place as last time. Adrian glanced at the clock. 7:15. Yeah, I can be there in an hour. Thank you. The call ended. Adrian sat on the edge of his bed, trying to figure out what this was about. Richard hadn't sounded angry, but he hadn't sounded happy either. He got dressed, made coffee, and left a note for Mia in case she woke up before Mrs. Chen arrived. Then he drove to the park. Richard was already there, sitting on the same bench as before. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much either. Adrian sat down beside him. What's going on? Richard didn't answer right away. He just stared out at the water, his hands folded in his lap. Catherine called me last night, he said finally. After the event. She wants to cut Elena off. Adrian's stomach dropped. What? She thinks Elena's making a mistake, and she wants to force her to end things with you. By cutting her off financially? Yes. Adrian felt anger rise in his chest. That's not her decision to make. I know, but she's going to do it anyway. Richard turned to look at him. Unless I stop her. Can you? I can try, but I need to know something first. What? Are you serious about my daughter, or is this just something temporary? Adrian met his gaze. I'm serious. Even if it costs her everything? I don't want it to cost her anything, but yeah. Even then. Richard nodded slowly. Good, because she's going to need you. What are you going to do? I'm going to talk to Catherine, and I'm going to make sure she understands that if she cuts Elena off, she loses both of us. Adrian blinked. You do that? I've spent 30 years letting Catherine make decisions I didn't agree with because I thought it was easier. But I'm done being easy. Richard stood, brushing off his pants. Elena deserves to be happy, and if you're the person who makes her happy, then I'm not going to stand in the way. Adrian stood too. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Catherine's not going to give up without a fight. I know. Richard extended his hand and Adrian shook it. Then Richard walked away, leaving Adrian alone on the bench. Adrian sat back down, his mind racing. He'd known this was going to be complicated, but he hadn't expected it to blow up this fast. His phone buzzed. Elena. Elena. My dad called. He told me what my mom's trying to do. Adrian. I know. I just talked to him. Elena. I don't care if she cuts me off. I'll figure it out. Adrian. You shouldn't have to choose between your family and me. Elena. I'm not choosing between you and my family. I'm choosing between you and their control. And I choose you. Adrian stared at the message, his chest tight. She was willing to give up everything for him, and he didn't know if that made him feel honored or terrified. Probably both. He typed back. Adrian. We'll figure it out together. Elena. Promise? Adrian. Promise. He slipped his phone into his pocket and stood up. The fight wasn't over, it was just beginning. But for the first time, he felt like they might actually win. Adrian spent the rest of that morning working on autopilot. He rewired a kitchen in a duplex, replaced 3 outlets in a law office, and drove across town to fix a breaker that kept tripping. His hands moved through the familiar motions, but his mind was stuck on Elena's last message. I choose you. 3 words that should have felt like a victory, but instead felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. By noon, he was sitting in his truck outside a hardware store, staring at his phone. He wanted to call her, to hear her voice, to make sure she was okay. But he didn't know what to say. Sorry, your mother's trying to ruin your life because of me didn't exactly roll off the tongue. His phone rang. Elena. Hey, he answered. Hey. Her voice sounded tight. Can you come over? Now. Yeah, I need to show you something. Adrian glanced at his schedule. He had 2 more jobs lined up, but neither were urgent. Okay, I'll be there in 20. When he arrived at Elena's house, the gate was open and her car was parked at an odd angle, like she'd pulled in too fast and hadn't bothered to straighten it. He walked to the front door and knocked. Elena opened it immediately, still in the same clothes from the night before, her hair messy and her eyes red. You okay? Adrian asked. No, but come in. He followed her through the house and out the back door. They walked down a stone path that wound through the trees, ending at a small garage he'd never noticed before. Elena pulled out a set of keys and unlocked the door. Inside sat a truck. Not just any truck. A 1967 Ford F-100 restored to perfection. The paint was a deep blue, the chrome gleaming, the interior redone in black leather. Adrian's breath caught. What is this? He asked. It's yours. He stared at her. What? I bought it 3 weeks ago. I was going to give it to you for your birthday, but... She stopped, her voice breaking. I don't know if we'll make it that long, so I'm giving it to you now. Adrian stepped closer to the truck, running his hand along the hood. It was flawless, the kind of restoration that took months and cost more than he wanted to think about. Elena, I can't accept this. Yes, you can. No, I really can't. This is... He gestured helplessly at the truck. This is too much. It's not too much. You told me once that you used to work on trucks with your dad, that you'd always wanted one like this but could never afford it. So I found one, and I had it restored. Adrian's throat tightened. He'd mentioned that in passing months ago, one of those late-night conversations where he'd been half asleep and talking without thinking. He hadn't realized she'd been listening that closely. Why? He asked. Because you deserve something that's just for you, not for work, not for Mia. Just for you. He looked at her, and the vulnerability in her face almost broke him. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Elena, there's more. She walked to the corner of the garage and pulled back a tarp, revealing a workbench stacked with tools. High-end ones, the kind Adrian had always looked at in catalogs but never bought. I'm buying the building next to Murphy's Diner, the one that's been empty for 2 years. Adrian frowned. Why? Because I'm turning it into a workshop. For you. He stared at her, not understanding. A workshop? Yeah, your own space. You can take on bigger projects, hire people if you want, build something that's yours. She pulled out a folder from the workbench and handed it to him. The lease is already signed. The space is yours for as long as you want it. Adrian opened the folder. Inside were blueprints, permits, contracts, all with his name on them. His hands started shaking. You did all this without asking me? I wanted it to be a surprise. It's a surprise, all right. He set the folder down, his mind spinning. Elena, this is insane. Why? Because you can't just buy me a workshop. You can't just... He gestured at the truck, the tools, the folder. You can't fix my life with money. Elena's face went pale. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? No. I'm trying to give you something you've always wanted, something you deserve. But I didn't ask for it. So what? You never ask for anything? You just keep grinding and sacrificing and acting like you don't deserve good things. Adrian's voice rose. That's not fair. Neither is you throwing this back in my face. They stood there, the tension crackling between them. Adrian wanted to be grateful. He wanted to wrap his arms around her and thank her for seeing him, for caring enough to do this. But all he felt was anger, irrational and hot, burning in his chest. This isn't love, Elena, he said quietly. This is control. She flinched like he'd slapped her. What? You're trying to fix me, trying to build me into someone who fits into your world, and I can't be that person. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to support you. By making decisions without me? By handing me a life I didn't choose? Elena's eyes filled with tears. I thought you'd be happy. I don't know what I am right now, but it's not happy. The silence that followed was brutal. Elena wiped her eyes, her hand shaking, and Adrian felt like the worst person in the world. I'm sorry, she whispered. I thought this would show you how much I believe in you. I know, and I appreciate that, but I need you to understand something. He took a breath. I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm enough. To my ex-wife, to my family, to everyone who looked at me and saw someone who didn't measure up. And I can't do that with you too. I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if you're with me because of who I am or because of who you think I could be. Elena's face crumpled. I love who you are. Then why are you trying to change my life? Because I want to give you options. I want you to have choices. Is that so wrong? Adrian ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. No, it's not wrong. But it feels like you're trying to buy your way into my life instead of just being in it. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's how I feel. Elena stepped back, putting distance between them. So what do you want me to do? Take it all back? Pretend I didn't see how hard you work or how much you sacrifice? I want you to stop trying to save me. I don't need saving. I need a partner. I am your partner. Are you? Or are you just the rich girl who feels bad for the guy who can't afford nice things? The words came out harsher than he intended, and the moment they left his mouth, he regretted them. Elena's expression hardened. If that's what you think of me, then maybe we're done here, she said. Adrian's stomach dropped. Elena, no, I'm tired of defending myself. I'm tired of proving that I'm not like everyone else you've been hurt by. So if you want to walk away, then walk away. But don't pretend it's because I'm trying to control you. It's because you're too scared to let anyone close. She turned and walked out of the garage. Adrian stood there, frozen, watching her disappear into the house. He wanted to go after her. He wanted to apologize, to take back everything he'd said. But he didn't move. Instead, he climbed into his truck and drove home. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the wheel. When he got home, Mia was in the living room building something with blocks. She looked up when he walked in. You're home early. Yeah. Did something happen? Adrian sat down on the couch, his head in his hands. I screwed up, kiddo. Mia set down her blocks and climbed onto the couch beside him. With Elena? Yeah. What did you do? I said some things I shouldn't have. And now I don't know if I can fix it. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you love her? Yeah, I do. Then you have to tell her, and you have to say you're sorry. It's not that simple. Why not? Adrian looked at his daughter, 7 years old and already wiser than he was. Because I'm scared. Of what? Of losing her. Of her realizing I'm not worth the trouble. Mia frowned. That's dumb, Dad. You're worth all the trouble. Adrian's throat tightened. He pulled Mia into a hug, holding her tight. Thanks, kiddo. Are you going to fix it? I'm going to try. That night, Adrian lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He replayed the conversation in his head, dissecting every word, every moment. He'd been wrong. He knew he'd been wrong. Elena hadn't been trying to control him. She'd been trying to give him something she thought would make him happy, and he'd thrown it back in her face. He grabbed his phone and typed out a message. Adrian, I'm sorry, can we talk? He hit send and waited. The minutes stretched into hours, but no response came. By morning, Adrian's phone was still silent. He got Mia ready for school, went through the motions of breakfast and drop-off, and drove to his first job in a daze. He kept checking his phone, hoping for something, anything, but Elena didn't respond. At noon, Richard called. Adrian, we need to meet, now. Adrian's chest tightened. What happened? Just meet me at the park. I'll explain when you get there. 20 minutes later, Adrian was sitting on the same bench as before. Richard looked worse than he had the day before, exhausted, his tie loose, his shirt wrinkled. Catherine filed papers this morning, Richard said without preamble. She's cutting Elena off, all of it, trust fund, inheritance, everything. Adrian felt like he'd been punched. Can she do that? Technically, yes, the trust was set up with conditions. If Elena doesn't meet them, the money goes to charity. What conditions? That she marries someone Catherine approves of by the time she's 30, and that she doesn't engage in behavior that damages the family reputation. Adrian's anger flared. That's insane. I know, but it's legal, and Catherine's invoking it. Can you stop her? Richard shook his head. Not this time. I tried, but she's made up her mind. Adrian stood, pacing. So what happens now? Elena has a choice. She can end things with you and get her money back, or she can walk away from all of it. And if she walks away, then she starts over. No safety net, no family support. Adrian's mind raced. This was his fault, all of it. If he just kept his distance, if he'd never let things get this far, Elena wouldn't be losing everything. I need to talk to her, he said. She's at the house. But Adrian, Richard stood, his expression serious. Don't make this decision for her. Let her choose. Adrian nodded, but his stomach was in knots. He drove to Elena's house, his heart pounding. The gate was closed this time, but it opened when he pressed the intercom. He parked and walked to the front door, his hands shaking. Elena answered. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. Adrian. Can I come in? She stepped aside and he walked into the foyer. The house felt colder than usual, the silence oppressive. I heard about your mom, Adrian said. Yeah, she doesn't waste time. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. If I hadn't... Stop. Elena's voice was firm. This isn't on you. This is on her, and on me for not standing up to her sooner. Adrian took a breath. Your dad said you have a choice. I know. What are you going to do? Elena looked at him, and there was something in her eyes he couldn't quite name. Fear, maybe. Or determination. I'm going to choose you, she said. Adrian's chest tightened. You can't do that. Yes, I can. Elena, you'll lose everything. I'll lose money. That's not everything. It's your future, your security. No, it's my mother's control, and I'm done letting her have it. Adrian stepped closer. I can't let you do this. You don't get to let me do anything. This is my choice. But, Adrian, stop. She took his hands, her grip firm. I've spent my entire life doing what other people wanted, living up to expectations that were never mine, and I'm tired. I'm so tired of pretending I'm happy when I'm not, of pretending I don't want something different. What do you want? I want you. I want a life that's real, and I want to build something that's mine, not something handed to me. Adrian's throat tightened. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. She buried her face in his chest, and he felt her shoulders shake. I'm sorry, he whispered, for what I said yesterday. I was wrong. No, you were right. I was trying to fix things instead of just being with you. I thought if I could give you everything you wanted, you'd never leave. I'm not leaving. How do I know that? Adrian pulled back, looking into her eyes. Because I'm choosing you too, every day, no matter how hard it gets. Elena's face crumpled and she started crying again. Adrian held her, stroking her hair, letting her fall apart in his arms. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red but clear. So what do we do now? She asked. We figure it out. Together. I don't have a plan. Neither do I, but we'll make one. Elena laughed, and it sounded a little broken, but also a little hopeful. You really think we can do this? Yeah, I do. She kissed him, soft and slow, and for the first time in days, Adrian felt like he could breathe. Over the next few weeks, things shifted in ways neither of them had expected. Elena moved out of the mansion and into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, old carpet, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, but it was hers. She sold some of her art to cover the deposit and started looking for work. Adrian helped her move, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs while Mia supervised, pointing out where things should go. This place is tiny, Mia said, looking around the empty living room. It's cozy, Elena corrected. It's tiny. Elena laughed. Okay, yeah, it's tiny. Adrian set down the last box and wiped his forehead. You sure about this? Positive. It's a big change. I know, but it's my change. He kissed her forehead. Then I'm proud of you. The workshop Elena had leased for Adrian became a point of contention. He didn't want to accept it at first, didn't want her spending money she didn't have. But Elena was stubborn. I already signed the lease, she said, and I'm not backing out, so you can either use it or let it sit empty. That's manipulative. I learned from the best. Adrian sighed. Fine, but I'm paying rent. You don't have to ease. I'm paying rent, Elena. End of discussion. She smiled. Okay. The workshop opened 3 months later. It was small, just one bay and a cramped office. But it was his. Adrian hired a kid from the community college to help with bigger jobs, and word spread quickly. Within 6 months, he had more work than he could handle. Mia loved the workshop. She'd come by after school and sit on the workbench, doing homework while Adrian worked. Sometimes Elena would stop by with sandwiches, and the three of them would eat lunch together, talking about nothing and everything. It wasn't perfect. There were bills that came too fast and fights about money, and moments when Adrian wondered if they'd made the right choice. But it was real, and it was theirs. One night, about a year after everything had fallen apart and come back together, Adrian and Elena sat on the fire escape outside her apartment. The city stretched out below them, lights blinking like stars. You ever regret it? Adrian asked. Regret what? Giving up your family's money, starting over. Elena thought about it. Sometimes, when I'm stressed about rent or when my car breaks down and I can't afford to fix it right away. But then I think about what I'd be doing if I hadn't, and I realize I'd be miserable. You think you would have ended up with someone else? Probably. Some guy my mother approved of. Someone safe and boring who'd spend his life managing investments and going to galas. Sounds terrible. It does, doesn't it? She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm glad I chose you. Even when I'm a pain in the ass? Especially then. Adrian smiled. I'm glad you chose me too. They sat in silence for a while, watching the city. Then Elena spoke again. I've been thinking about something. Yeah? I want to start painting again, not just for me, for other people. Like selling your work? Yeah, maybe open a small gallery someday, nothing fancy, just a space where people can come and see art that feels real. Adrian turned to look at her. You should do it. You think? Yeah. You're good, and you've got something to say. People should hear it. Elena smiled, and it was the kind of smile that lit up her whole face. Okay, I'll do it. Good. She kissed him, and he kissed her back, and for a moment, everything felt right. 6 months later, Elena's gallery opened. It was tiny, just a storefront in a neighborhood most people didn't visit, but it was hers. She hung her paintings on the walls, set up a small desk in the corner, and waited. The first week, only 3 people came in. The second week, 5. But by the end of the first month, word had spread. People started showing up. Not the wealthy art collectors from her old life, but regular people who connected with her work. Students, teachers, construction workers, nurses, people who saw themselves in her paintings. Adrian came to the opening night with Mia. They stood in the corner, watching Elena talk to visitors, her face flushed with excitement. She looks happy, Mia said. Yeah, she does. Do you think you'll marry her? Adrian blinked. What? You love her, right? Yeah. And she loves you. Yeah. So are you going to marry her? Adrian looked at his daughter. Would you be okay with that? Mia shrugged. Yeah. She's nice. And she makes you smile more. Adrian's chest tightened. You think so? I know so. He pulled Mia into a hug. Thanks, kiddo. So are you going to ask her? Maybe. Maybe's a dumb answer. Adrian laughed. You're right, it is. 3 months later, Adrian took Elena back to the park where they'd had so many conversations. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Why are we here? Elena asked. Because I wanted to talk to you. About what? Adrian took a breath. He'd rehearsed this a dozen times, but now that the moment was here, his mind went blank. I'm not good at this, he started. I'm not good at big gestures or saying the right thing, but I know what I want, and I want you. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Adrian, I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to fight about stupid things and make up before bed. I want to build a life with you, one that's messy and hard and real. And I want Mia to grow up knowing what it looks like when 2 people choose each other, even when it's not easy. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple silver ring, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just something that felt right. So will you marry me? Elena's hands flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Yes, yes, of course. Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. They stood there, holding each other as the sun dipped below the horizon. And for the first time in his life, Adrian felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The wedding was small, just Mia, Richard, a few friends, and Mrs. Chen, who cried through the entire ceremony. Catherine didn't come. Elena had sent an invitation, but it was returned unopened. It hurt, but Elena didn't let it ruin the day. They got married into the workshop, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects. It wasn't traditional, but it was theirs. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Mia cheered so loud it echoed off the walls. Afterward, they had dinner at Murphy's Diner, burgers and fries and milkshakes, the kind of meal that felt like home. This is the best wedding ever, Mia announced, her mouth full of fries. You've never been to another wedding, Adrian pointed out. Doesn't matter, this one's the best. Elena laughed, squeezing Adrian's hand under the table. I think she's right. Adrian looked around the table, at Mia, at Elena, at the people who'd shown up for them, and realized something. He'd spent so long believing he wasn't enough, that he didn't deserve good things. But sitting here, surrounded by the life he'd built, he understood the truth. It wasn't about being enough for someone else. It was about being enough for yourself. And when you were, everything else fell into place. Years later, Adrian would look back on that night in the workshop, the night he almost walked away, and realize it was the moment everything changed. Not because Elena had given him a truck or a workshop, but because she'd given him something more important, the courage to believe he deserved to be happy. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the money, not the mansion, not the life they could have had, but the life they chose. The one built on honesty and hard work and the decision to show up for each other, even when it was hard. Because love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing someone over and over again, even when the world tried to pull you apart. And that was the only kind of love worth having.